Welcome to today's video. And in today's video, we are going to talk about Kustomize, and I'm accompanied by Amit. Hi, Amit.
Hey Farooq, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks. All right. So today's topic is quite interesting. I think a lot of people are working on Kubernetes, and we work on YAML every day. So one of the tools that you keep hearing is Kustomize. So we're going to look at Kustomize. What are the options, and why would you want to use Kustomize versus a plain YAML file? Right. So Amit, let's start.
Ye- Yeah. So today, what we are going to cover is customize overview, how to use customize Helm combo, and advanced customize usage. Um, so Farooq, you've been working on Kubernetes for a while, and how often do you feel that when you're using Helm, there's a lot of templating involved, and your developers keep asking you, we have so much of complex configuration, etc. How often do you encounter this situation?
Yeah, I think a lot. So I think Helm is good to have your charts created and centralized at a location where you can reuse them. But the challenge, I think, is when you have different environments and you need to have different configurations passed. So I think that's somewhere where Helm is kind of tedious.
Yeah, definitely. And you might have to require multiple values, files, etc.
Yes,
Uh, and
correct.
customize can potentially have that, but at the same time, there are certain advanced customized usages which alleviate those pains or those pain points. So today we'll walk through those particular parts. And first is the customized overview. So what is customized? Customize is basically a Kubernetes native configuration management tool. Uh, so whether we talk about just our kubectl resources or Kubernetes resources, YAML files, it can all be managed and configured using Kustomize or Helm. The difference within Helm is you'll have to template that entire code versus in Kustomize, it can mostly be your plain Jane YAML. And once in a blue moon, you could potentially change that out for certain other environment variable formats that you want so that it looks cleaner and you understand what is happening. So the first thing you will also realize is it's easier to manage multiple environment specific config file. And once you get involved in GitOps, it simplifies GitOps to quite a large extent. And today we'll walk through one such scenario where all we have to change from environment to environment is just a envars file.
Cool. All right. So I have a question here. So let's say that I'm just using Kubernetes without any of the tools. So which one should I choose and why?
Initially, if you're just starting out, customize might be easier to understand. So one thing to remember is Helm is a templating engine, which means that you need to understand Go templating and you also need to understand Helm templating because it's further built on Go templating concepts. Now, instead of understanding that, if you understand your simplified YAML and Kubernetes resources, Kustomize will mostly be quite straightforward to you, especially the basic stuff of just applying resources, etc. Whereas Helm can potentially be overwhelming with all its range and their with loops and range loops and your conditionals and the templates.tpl, etc. It might get overwhelming, whereas Kustomize can simplify that particular concept for you.
Got it. Cool.
So one of the most important things about Kustomize is initially the folder structure. So today we will walk through first the theoreticals, and once we cover that, we will go on a practical demo of how it looks and how you can utilize Kustomize. So one of the most important parts is your folder structure, where you generally tend to create an environment-based folder structure. So here, for example, you can see I have created a demo using Cert Manager, and within it, because it's a GCP environment, we have additional resources such as custom role, policy member, service account, etc. What is Kustomize doing here? It's basically saying that it has a base configuration, and that base configuration will then be overwritten with the overlays. So whatever base configuration you have here can be written based on whatever overlays you create within your dev, your staging setup.
Okay.
You can also use...
Right.
Sorry, please go ahead.
So at a minimum, what is the folder structure that I would need if I'm getting started with Kustomize?
It depends on the total number of environments. So to begin with, you require compulsorily one base layer or one base folder, and your overlay can be one or more. So at a minimum, you're going to have one dev environment. So you're going to have dev. Potentially, you could have dev, staging, prod, how many ever you want. But on an average, I would say you have two main folder structures. One is your base, and second is overlays with the actual overlay name.
Got it.
You can then see replacements, and that is where it goes into the advanced part, which we'll cover later. But that is where that particular folder structure is going to help us apply one logic across multiple environments while using only the environment variables of the respective environment. So we'll look into that a bit later. And finally, you have patches which you can use within Kustomize in order to apply certain resources which are only specific as a patch for that environment.
Okay.
We then have the two commands for Kustomize, which is your Kustomize build for your respective structure. So here you can see, as I was saying, I'm performing a Cert Manager demo. So what we are doing is just Kustomize build Cert Manager /base will give you the output of how your code looks. And similarly, if you do it for the overlay, it will show you the dev specific configuration. And as I was mentioning earlier, we have Kustomize Helm combo, which is you can use the Helm charts field within Kustomize. It basically uses Helm as a subprocess so that it can give you the best of both worlds. All you have to do is add the -- enable Helm as part of your build command, and you need to fill out the Helm charts field within Kustomize in that format. So where the name would be the name of your Helm chart, your version would be the version of the Helm chart, repo would be the URL of which Helm chart repository you're using, and similarly, the release name includes CRDs, etc. This is going to help us massively in building a simplified, unified setup.
Okay, so what you're saying is instead of using the YAML files for Kustomize, we are using the Helm charts as the source, and then we are overwriting them with our own custom YAMLs, right?
Yes. And what's the advantage of that is rather than calling the entire Kustomize resource folder structure where you need to specify all the resources, etc., you're simplifying this whole process by leveraging someone who has already built the Helm charts so that you have a base structure. So Helm charts, we all know, have default values which create this structure where you can deploy a lot of charts out of the box. And this is leveraging those concepts while also helping us to only override very, very specific things.
Got it. Okay.
And now we are going to walk through the advanced Kustomize demo. So as you all can see, we basically have a folder structure of customized DNS infra cert manager. You have the base layer within the setup, and you have the replacement layers here. You finally have your overlays with dev or staging, and I've set up a README to help people understand this whole repository. At the end of this demo, we will share the GitHub repository for people who want to play around with Kustomize.
Yeah.
So to begin with, here you can see the entire initial base layer with customization.yaml, and we are also adding certain additional resources such as IAM service account, IAM policy member, etc. Now, this is very helpful where your Helm chart comes out of the box with certain resources, but in your use case, you might require certain additional Kubernetes resources for you to run it in a production-ready type of environment. This is where these resources come in very handy. And one more thing that we will identify is we are using markers such as project ID with a dollar value so that it looks like an environment variable. Just to be clear, Kustomize, the latest version, does not support environment variables, but we are leveraging the look and feel of environment variable replacements in order to help any users easily replace such values, because you're going to have a different value for dev, you're going to have a different value for staging, and so on and so forth.
So I think this kind of improves the readability of the code. And like somebody's looking at this code, they can understand that this value is going to be substituted once Kustomize runs, right?
Yes, absolutely. And here you can see that if we basically fire Kustomize build, now since this is the Kustomize Helm combo, what you'll notice is I have to add the -- enable Helm in order to get an output. So here you can see I made a mistake of enabled and it failed. But the second I run enable Helm, you get an output. Also, if you do not put the enable Helm, it will explicitly give you an error saying that you must specify enable Helm within your command. Now, the command I ran was for the base layer. So what you'll notice in this particular command is the environment variable type of values look exactly as I had defined in the base layer. And to simplify this whole process, what we have done is we create a variable file called envars. What does this envars do is we just add certain variables which we are then going to utilize in order to replace the values within our base layer. This way, your respective customized chart becomes very easily extensible from dev to staging, staging to prod, and your GitOps code would look very simplified because all you would change within your GitOps code for the different environments is this. And the rest you all will use the exact same base layer and potentially and the replacement files here. So we'll walk you through this too in a bit. Now we are going to take a look at the customization.yaml. To begin with, how are we replacing those values which look like environment variables? We use a concept of config map generator and replacement combo. So using the config map generator, we are creating an config map with the environment variables, which we earlier showed. And once that is done, we then use replacements in order to replace the environment variables with the new values. So looking at our current case, let's explain the example of cluster issuer. Now, in this particular replacement, we say, let's use the source config map Cert Manager envars, which we created using the environment variables we just showed, and we say we want the specific environment variable called project ID, which we defined earlier. We are going to use that particular variable to then replace target cluster issuer. Let's encrypt dev GCP. Now, if we look for cluster issuer, let's encrypt dev GCP. This is it. It will then go underneath the field part spec, Acme, solvers, array 0, DNS 01 in order to update the value, which is spec, Acme, solvers, DNS 0, which is this whole array, then cloud DNS, then project, and it's going to replace the specific value. Now, your first question might be, hey, Amit, I noticed you said that this should be let's encrypt dev GCP, but this is not let's encrypt dev GCP. How does that work?
Yeah,
This is where, absolutely, this is where the magic of replacement comes in. So we are using components of Kustomize in order to perform replacements and move replacements from having to keep it in every individual environment, such as dev, staging, prod. As you can see here, this is currently in my dev environment. I wanted to show an example of this to see how it would look in the respective dev, staging, etc. overlays. And now what we're going to look at is how it will look if we move it to the components replacements overlay. Now, the catch about components is it's shared across multiple environments, and you can use specifically the config map that you have created here to perform manipulations using the replacements. So you're getting the best of both worlds where you are creating these replacements, which is custom configuration, and at the same time, you're using the config map generator, which is there on the environment level. What this does is it enables you to only have to update config map environment variables, and you can perform all the replacements you want across all environments using a single component replacements file.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you have each environment, you have environment vars, which is kind of like a key value pair. And then from that, you're creating the config map using the config map generator that you showed, right?
Yes.
And then once you have that, you're using the replacements to substitute the values in the config map.
Correct.
Okay.
So how this helps is now that we are utilizing or leveraging components, we are saving a lot of time and effort rather than imagine having to put the same replacement. So the reason I showed two examples, one is with the replacements in this location and one is with the replacement in a common location. Now imagine having to repeat this whole code in multiple environments. I have to mention the replacements in dev and staging, and I can show you the example of that right now in staging. So here you can see I've had to repeat the exact same code of replacements on staging environment and on dev environment. But why do we need to do that when we can consolidate it all into single replacements component? That's where replacement or components comes in very handy, where all we say is, let us use this component, which is common across all environments. But what we are going to do, which is environment specific, is create this config map generator. This is where the magic begins and where it's going to save us lots of time and effort, which basically means in a GitOps world, all you have to do is change this nvars file and your PR will look gorgeous because you're going to just update that one nvars file and the devs can very well easily identify, hey, this is dev configuration, this is staging configuration. The remaining code stays the same across all the environments. So that is perfect for them. And lastly, but finally,
Yeah, sorry. Before we go ahead, I have a question over here. How do you make it environment specific when you do the replacements? How do you avoid repeating yourself over here in the replacements?
So you have two ways of putting replacements, right? So here you can see we have put it in the environment file, but if I instead move this code into components, so this is where components comes in handy, where we define the components in one specific place. So if I moved the component from the replacement from the environment specific location to the common location, which is in components, this is where it would come in very handy. And you basically have this one code base where you do not need to repeat yourself. So we could potentially get rid of our entire code here in order to ensure that we basically put all our values into that specific location. Do remember one thing though, you need to do it in a specific order because of the way you are performing your actions. As if you put it at the beginning, it will fail since it is expecting your last replacement was expecting something like let's encrypt dev GCP, for example. So this dev replacement has not yet happened at this particular level.
Okay. So can you show us where did you do the dev replacement in this example?
So here you can see I basically said let's encrypt dev GCP. And if I show you the previous cluster issuer, you have this deploy environment GCP. Now let's look for the cluster issuer within our component setup.
Yes.
Here you can see the cluster issuer is being used, but currently within the source, we are updating the deploy environment in this particular location. So if you look here, we basically, for the kind cluster issuer, we are going to go and update the metadata.name. We are also updating another value, but this may or may not apply to all your respective setups. In this case, you will notice that we are updating these two values, which is metadata.name and acme. So metadata.name is just metadata name. And the second one is spec, acme, private key secret ref, and name. Now, you would be wondering, how are we replacing the center part? Like, are we using environment variables? No. As I mentioned before, Kustomize does not support environment variables anymore, but it does support delimiters. So we are leveraging the hyphen delimiter here, and we are saying at index 1 of the hyphen delimiter, let's go and replace that component. What does that mean? That means this is index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. So very explicitly, we have told it, let's go to index 1 for both the components, which is one is private key secret ref, and the second is let's encrypt or metadata name. So here you can still see that for both these particular values, the array is the same, which is 1, or the delimiter is 1. And that is exactly what we have mentioned here within the options.
Okay.
So this is how we leverage performing all these various actions and updating the values. The other thing you will also notice is you can play around with how you access certain values. So you'll notice that you have the option of sometimes using the array number, which is array 0, array 1, or you also can use something to the effect of this. So if you have a value where there are multiple such values, you can specify, I want to specifically update the value for secret key API token and only update those values. So this is one of the options where you can make changes. So for today's demo, we are not using Vault. Hence, I don't have the source value for this particular file. But when we cover Vault at a later time and point, we can show that example. But we do have this particular example where we have specified which metadata service account we are using. And here you'll notice that it is basically going to update the respective service account using IAM-GK service account, which is part of the service account itself within our code base. So this is the service account, but if we go and view the service account which is created by our Helm chart, we will find this particular value. Okay, looks like I'll have to output this file. Let's go and open dev.yaml. Now let's search for kind service account. And here you can see the value. I'm going to just word wrap. So here you can see we are leveraging the value here. We have specified that metadata annotations. And since this is an object, we specify which object do we want to modify using this particular structure. By using this, you tell it exactly which annotation you're trying to modify. Now, in this case, we have 1, but even if we had 10, it would know exactly which specific one to modify because of the name that we provide here in this particular format. And we would then update the value for that respective name using this particular format. Again, here you can see we use SA email and we are replacing the value of SA email. We have specified that it's what is the field path we are updating that particular SA email at. And we get the final value, which is Cert Manager @Kustomize-demo, and that's the service account.
Okay.
And that's about it for the advanced customized usage. Thank you.
So thanks. I think this was good. So in what we can do is a lot of combinations and across environments that we can use with Kustomize and this select fields and have different environment values according to the dev staging or whichever environment we want to do, right?
Yes. So this actually simplifies your overall process where you have one code literally and you can reuse it for dev, staging, prod. And rather than having complex values.yamls for dev, staging, and prod, you could pretty much have a 7-line code envars file, which will have only the environment variables which change from environment to environment. And this is going to save a lot of overhead.
This definitely will be easier than any other tool that we might want to keep for different environments. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is this will finally tie up into things like Argo CD and all, where you are utilizing Argo CD out of the box and it just reads, you specify what folder, what environments you want to deploy, and it performs everything in the background. This starts becoming very handy in marketplaces like them, where you do not actually have to update specific things, or you don't have to update multiple values file, which initially when we began on GitOps journey for our clients and open source world, we initially started down the values route, and then we were like, hey, we found Kustomize Helm is actually a simpler combination for us to perform these same actions without the overhead of actually having like 6 different values files for different environments. So like 3 for dev, 3 for staging, 3 for prod. Yeah. And I guess that's a wrap. Thanks, Farooq, for hosting me once again, and it was great joy of covering another interesting tech topic.
Thank you. Thanks, Amit. And please follow and comment and subscribe. And I'll put a link to the GitHub repo for the snippet of the codes that Amit shared with us today. And we'll see you in the next video then. Thank you. And
thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.